don't be afraid to be a tourist. It is so fun to just take off that whole like, oh, I'm going to live like a local and not embrace the tourist stuff. When I went to New York City and lived there for an assignment, we got the hot dog. Someone made a caricature of us. We got the I Love New York shirts and wore those. We got all those off the bucket list. And then we were like, okay, now we're local. Hello and welcome to the Nomadicare show. I'm Laura. I am the co-host of this show and also the founder of Nomadicare. And I'm sitting here with the other co-host, Jacob.
Hi.
And he builds a lot of the technology at Nomadicare, and he's also my husband.
Hey.
Awesome. So today, Jacob has a question from our online Facebook group that you guys should join. If you're not, it's all for travel therapists. And what's the name of the group?
Travel Therapy Therapists.
Yeah, lots of redundancy, but it's a great group. Travel Therapy Therapists on Facebook. It's super active. And what question do we have?
Yeah, every keyword in there. And we just crossed 17,000 members. So
17,000 travel therapists, no recruiters allowed, meaning it's literally a space just for travel therapists to collaborate. And it's a very cool, active group.
No one's selling anything. No spam, no insurance, no... I don't know what else sucks about Facebook groups.
Just privacy, you know. You get to be a little bit more private.
Yeah,
okay,
totally.
Continue. What's the question we got?
The question is, as a travel therapist, how do you balance work and adventure?
Okay, I like this. So I would say the coolest thing about being a travel therapist is the ability to get paid essentially to travel. I think the coolest thing about being a travel therapist is we're getting paid to travel.
Yeah.
I traveled as, I guess more of a adventure traveler versus just for the highest pay package. I was like, I want to see cool places. And I had so much fun while I was a travel therapist. I was definitely on the adventure side of it.
Yeah.
But I will say, one thing that I love about this question is this person is curious about the balance, meaning they're also prioritizing work. And I think sometimes that gets lost in the Facebook groups, in the questions. Like it becomes like lesser of a priority. And I think they're both so important. I think especially once we started Nomadicare, we've done some staffing ourselves, different things. And you start putting yourself in the shoes of more people than just the therapist because you see other people's emotions, heartaches, what they're going through. So we've gotten to see firsthand how hard it is for some of these clinic owners to find a good therapist to come and see their patients. And their heart is like beating for the patients in their community. And so they're paying all this extra money for a clinician to come and serve their population. And so for them, it's super important for this therapist to come in and be a great therapist, you know, and treat their patients the way that they would want them to be treated. I'm like having people in my mind of the private outpatient clinic owners, you know, they really want to do good for their patients. And so in general, I like that the person that's asking this question is considering the work side, because sometimes I feel like we forget how important it is for us to be professionals too, to show up. And it's, even though the adventure is crazy important, and I'll give tips on how I think to have great adventures, showing up first and foremost, knowing the only reason I'm here is because this facility is paying me way more money than they usually pay someone to have a skilled clinician that they can trust to see their patients come in and care about their facility in the way that they would hope to. Yeah. So I think your first priority when you get somewhere is to be a good clinician and make sure you're doing a good job for the person who is paying your way there and trusting you with their patients. So what I kind of think of is you balance it where like the first week or two might be less adventuring if you need it to be, to really make sure you're doing well as a therapist that you were hired to come do. Scary being the new person over and over. So a lot of times you get into a place, you're figuring out your housing for a day or two before the, job starts. And when you go, though, for that first day on the job, you've kind of got to block the rest out. You got to block out like, oh, I have to unpack all these boxes. Where should I adventure to? And say, this is no longer about me today. This is about how I'm serving this person who's paying me and trusting me to be here. So you go in being a little bit more, I am thinking about them. So you're being friendly, you're being professional, you're learning documentation, you're getting a feel for the patient caseload, and showing with that first impression on the first day for them to be like, oh, good, I'm glad we hired this person. They're going to be great for 13 weeks. And make sure you're really figuring out how you can adapt to their culture and support them the best way that you can and learn the nuance of that clinic. You might notice some things, especially if you haven't done much of that setting before. Because as a therapist, you might say, you know what, this year I'm going to go try out schools. You might have never worked in a school. And that's just part of being a travel therapist is like they'll hire you with having never done that setting. Or maybe you've never worked in a SNF before. Maybe you have, and this SNF is totally different and they have a different documentation system. Or it's a hospital and this one specializes in head trauma. And you've never done that much with head trauma before. So whatever it is, you've got to assess, how can I be a really good therapist for these patients, first and foremost, who are counting on us to treat them.
Yeah.
And for this facility as a whole, the documentation. So it's overwhelming. It can be. And you might go around the first day or two, like making notes and thinking through, I have a few gaps in my knowledge where I am not going to be the top A player unless I fill in these gaps. And for me, I always said that's my responsibility to fill in the gaps. They are paying me more money and I am supposed to be able to hit the ground running. And so if there is a certain diagnosis they get a lot or something that I know, I have not treated this patient population as much. I'm a little bit rusty. I will spend the first week, in the evenings unpacking and then maybe doing like a continued education credit or reading some of my old books, about, like my resources on that thing. I will make sure when I go in the next day, I can show up for that patient better because I found my gap. So I always think of that first when I'm there. And it also allows me to kind of settle in a little bit versus if you're already on like night one trying to go out and see a Broadway show or, whatever's really cool in the area, you're missing that professional piece where you've got to kind of ground yourself into the job first and settle into that first.
It's almost like finding your stride, right? You have to like kind of get the momentum going to be like, okay, I can go into this setting, right? And be an amazing clinician.
Yeah.
And then once I can nail that down, okay, cool. Now let's go have fun. Let's, explore this city that I'm only here for 13 weeks, stuff like that.
Exactly. And I think that's where the balance is. It's not equal at the beginning. It's probably weighted a lot more on the job and settling into your apartment. A lot of times you get there or wherever you're living, especially if you're living solo, but anywhere, and you might be like, oh, they don't have this pot that I wanted. These towels feel like sandpaper. Like you kind of get your Walmart run list, so you got to go settle into there, settle into the job, do a little bit of self-care because it's emotional in that like adrenaline kind of way where you're like nervous and that takes a lot of energy from you. So you might do more self-care. Okay, so let's say that's done. We're on week 2 and you're like, all right, I feel calmer. I know the job. Now I want to make the most of the adventure part of this balance, which is my favorite part. 13 weeks goes by so fast. I mean, it's 3 months. And so now you already only have 2.5 months left. And the last little bit, a lot of times you're doing more work, finding the next job, finding the housing for the next job. So you've got like 2 golden months of just like, this is my playtime after work. And so with that, I was someone who a little bit of mixture of the spontaneity, but mixed with like planning the stuff I really wanted to do. So you might start with a list, like your bucket list of that area. And if you don't know what to put on that bucket list, there are an abundance of places you can go to help make that bucket list. So now I say social media is a really great place to find little cool gems that are like fun to see in different areas. I mean, especially if you're like in a bigger city, I guess, versus like just in the middle of Cowtown somewhere, but if you're in a city with stuff to do, you just put in the hashtag of your city, or on TikTok, you'll just like type in the name of the city and people make content about like, oh, I went to this place and look how cool it is. And you find really unique stuff that way. So you'll just scroll through it, find the stuff that looks cool, put it on your bucket list. And then you can go and say, okay, what are the big natural cool things that happen in this area that only happen here? Maybe it's a tulip festival that only happens around, Seattle area. You want to go see it if you're there for the season. Or this place is known for its coffee. Maybe I'll do a roastery tour because that's just this region and that would be unique for this region.
A national park is real popular, right?
Totally. Yeah. Zion National Park's down the street. Like, why would I miss that while I'm here? So you write down, this is like a great bucket list for this region. That's either a day's drive for the weekends or right around the corner. So you'll pop those on there. And then if you're someone who likes to make friends, like you want to meet people while you're there, not just do all the solo stuff, you might look on meetup.com and see what are the events that someone else is already hosting. A lot of hiking events. That's always like on every meetup city. Like you could join the hiking events. So you're going with a group of locals and meeting people, different ways that way.
Yeah.
Or, they've got tons of events on meetup.com. So that could be your way to be like, okay, let me do at least 1 or 2 things a week where I'm like getting with a group and can easily talk to other people. So you're going to go online and make your list of like, here's what I want to do. And then you can literally just like grab a calendar and write it all over the calendar and see, does this fit into 2 months? What's most important? Because it's crazy how fast it goes by and you can blink and be like, oh my God, I didn't do like anything while I was here and now I have to go somewhere else. And you don't want to feel that way. You want to feel like, wow, I really saw so much and did so much.
Yeah.
So I say put it on the calendar. And then aside from that, the other kind of mindset things that I would do is number 1, it is so fun to just take off that whole like, oh, I'm going to live like a local and not embrace the tourist stuff. When I went to New York City and lived there for an assignment, the first like couple days, me and my best friend did that one together, but we did like all of the touristy stuff. We got the hot dog. Someone made a caricature of us. We got the I Love New York shirts and wore those. Like we did the Eiffel, or not the Eiffel Tower, the Empire State Building. We did like all of the most touristy things we could and Times Square in the middle of it, took all the pictures, like so excited. We got all those off the bucket list. And then we were like, okay, now we're locals. Like, so I had to be a tourist first and like embrace it. And then we got to pretend like we were locals after that. But it was a blast and you get so many cool pictures. And then number 2, try to be as extroverted as you can.
Yeah.
I know personalities are different, but the amount of tips you get from just talking to people, like you're at a restaurant, sit at the bar, get your food and talk to like everyone at the bar and be like, hey, I'm in this random industry. I'm going to be here for 3 months. Like, what should I see? And you get such cool tips. And maybe, 25% of the time they'll be like, oh, let me get your number. Like, we'll invite you out next time and stuff like that. But I think literally just opening your mouth and talking to people around you is a great way to get tips, meet people,
especially if you're new in a place. I mean, you have literally nothing to lose. Nobody knows who you are.
Yeah.
You can go out there, and if you were shy, now you're not. If you were, totally. Boring, now you're funny. Like, you can just be who you want to be.
Yeah.
And so just imagine going into, maybe like it's a bar or whatever, and you hear someone talking about The Office, and you're like, oh, I know The Office. And so you go in there and you start jumping in there in that conversation. You never know what's going to come out of it. And even if it totally bombs and they look at you weird, it's like, they're going to forget about you in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then you're never going to see that person again. So
yeah,
it is like traveling gives you that like superpower to go in and just go, go into a situation and say, all right, I'm going to experience this situation as grand as I can possibly do and have no fear.
Yeah. I love that. Because you're right. There's no one there that's going to be like, what are you trying to do? You've never been this outgoing or like no one's there to be like, that's not who you were yesterday. You can be like, I can be whoever I want. Nobody in this whole place knows me. A little bit powerful, Yeah. So yeah, that's my advice. Take the first few weeks, settle in, be a good therapist, take the profession seriously so we keep a good reputation and, people want to hire travelers. We don't want to have a bad reputation as being flaky or not willing to we just want to be good professionals.
Yeah.
And then go have as much fun as you possibly can. Traveling is exponentially better when you get out there and see stuff instead of going home and watching Netflix. Like, go see it.
Yeah, and it's only going to get harder over time, right? You're going to, as more responsibilities come into your life, whether it's marriage, kids, a house, this or that, things get harder to do. And if you're so lucky enough to be like young and have no responsibilities and traveling to different parts of the country to get paid more money than you would if you didn't do it, take advantage of that and like, start checking things off the list, start building the collage of, state park tickets, start, building that kind of, that the experiences, like go out and do it because it won't be there forever.
Eat the food you wouldn't normally eat. If you always eat burgers, go eat Thai food. Like try things you don't try. Do it. And you're like, oh, never had that before. That's a new experience. Yeah. Makes it better. And now they've got this very last thing I'll say, but it's one of my favorite things that I had when I was in New York. Me and Stacia, who I was living with, and we were doing all the things. We had this big thing on our wall, and we would take like memories from each of the places we went. Like this restaurant, we'd take a napkin. This event, we took the flyer. This thing, we took a Polaroid picture, and we like tacked it up. So the whole time we were like building all these memories, and our wall was getting full of all this stuff. So every day we would come home and, especially over, because we ended up being there, I think, me 6 months and her longer. But over time, we'd be like, oh my God, our life is so cool because we're building this big memory wall as we go to. And I thought that was a really fun, like, thing to have on the wall. When people came over, they'd be like, oh, this is so cool. And we could tell stories, but it helped us feel even more like the main characters of our life, to be like, look at all these things we're doing. This is so fun. All right. That was a great question. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode. If you enjoyed the episode, like, subscribe, share with a friend. And if you need a recruiter and you want to get going on travel therapy, come to Nomadicare.com. We are the recruiter matchmakers. We vet recruiters, and we can make sure to hook you up with the recruiter who's honest, pays great, but also who has jobs where you want to go. Because every staffing agency has access to different jobs, and we can match you to the agency who has the most jobs where you're looking to go. So come on to Nomadicare, and we'll see you next time on this show. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Nice to meet you, hello. Never been here before, but I feel like I'm home. Yeah. Put my feet on the road.